My name is Stacey. I'm a training officer for Mind and Mid Hearts, and I'm going to be delivering this webinar, Masculinity, Mental Health and the Modern Workplace. Now, if you haven't heard of Mind and Mid Hearts before, that's okay. You might have heard of Mind, though. Mind are a national charity working across England and Wales, raising awareness around mental health, and they do a lot of kind of top level stuff like working on policies and working with the government and the media and that kind of stuff. And then there are 100 different local minds across England and Wales. We are your mental health charity here in Hertfordshire that runs services in the local area to support people with their mental health. So that can be one-to-one counselling, it can be peer support groups, working with people who are coming out of hospital, and mental health training as well. So if you would like any more information on Mind and Mid Hearts, please feel free to follow us on social media or scan the QR code on the screen that will take you to our social media channels and newsletter. Just a little bit of housekeeping before we begin. We are due to finish today at 12:45. And if we could just keep Q&A until the end of the session. So if possible, if you could just stay on mute until the Q&A at the end of the session. And just to let you know, this session is being recorded and will be made publicly available. Talking about mental health can sometimes feel a bit heavy, so just be mindful of how you're feeling today. Make sure you're looking after yourself during and after today's session. So today we're going to focus on an area of mental health that often goes under the radar, the well-being of men at work. It's Men's Health Month, so although men make up half of our workforce, their experiences are often shaped by stigma, expectations around masculinity, and fears of judgment. In the UK, men account for 3/4 of all suicide deaths, according to the Office for National Statistics. This is a stark reminder that we're not just talking about well-being at work, we're talking about lives. So our focus today is on the workplace, because the workplace has enormous power to shape well-being. Leaders, HR teams, and organisational culture all play a significant role in whether men feel safe enough to speak up, seek support early, and access the help they need. Now, this isn't a session that aims to blame men or criticise organisations. It's just about understanding the unique pressures faced by men, challenging the unhelpful norms, and creating environments where openness and vulnerability are treated as strengths. So across the next 45 minutes, we'll explore why men often struggle to seek help, what risk factors exist specifically in the workplace, and most importantly, what practical actions you as leaders, managers, or decision makers can make to make a meaningful difference. Let's begin by looking at the current landscape of men's mental health at work. There are several key statistics that illustrate the state of men's mental health in the UK. These numbers show both the scale of the issue and some of the barriers that men still face in accessing support. So according to the 2025 Bupa Wellbeing Index, around 50% of men in the UK report that they have struggled with their mental health at some point. So this really emphasises that mental health difficulties are really common among men, even if they aren't always spoken about openly. Now, what's particularly worrying is that fewer than half of the men who acknowledged experiencing mental health challenges in the report actually sought medical support or professional advice. So this highlights the ongoing stigma that discourages many men from reaching out, even when they're struggling. We do see this across all health issues, so it's not just mental health, with 1/4 of men saying they prefer to deal with it on their own. This shows that a substantial number feel the need that they need to keep health issues private rather than engage in discussions around health. This figure is much the same even when we look at younger adults as well. So over a third, 36%, say they are more likely to turn to other places before seeking their doctor's advice on healthcare matters. According to Mental Health UK, about 12.5% of men in England live with a diagnosed common mental health order. So that's your anxiety and depression. This number only reflects those who receive a diagnosis. So the true prevalence may be even higher. So despite these high levels of men in need, despite these high levels of need, men only account for 32% of referrals to the NHS Talking Therapy service. So this suggests that men not only seek help less often, but also face barriers or perceptions that discourage them from engaging with psychological support. In the workplace, mental health pressures are also significant. So more than 190,000 men a year report experiencing stress, depression, or anxiety that is caused or worsened by their job. This shows how much occupational pressures contribute to men's mental health struggles. As I said a moment ago, suicide remains one of the most serious and tragic aspects of men's mental health. In 2023, there were just over 6,000 suicides in England and Wales, and around 75% of those were men. This makes suicide the leading cause of death for men under 50, which is an extremely sobering statistic. Relationships are inextricably linked with mental health. When one suffers, the other often suffers too. So 28% of men say their mental health problems have led to their relationship breaking down entirely. 43% of men in the 25 to 34 age bracket suggested that they hid their mental health struggles from their partner. So taken together, these statistics show that men experience mental health challenges at high rates, yet they are still far less likely to reach out for support. So understanding these barriers is essential if we want to create healthier workplaces, communities, and support systems for them. When we talk about men's mental health, one of the biggest challenges isn't the absence of support. The support's out there. The difficulty is that men often have trouble reaching out for help. So a number of barriers get in the way, and most of them are cultural, not personal. So first, many men grow up with this message that they're supposed to be strong, self-reliant, and unemotional. And these messages show up in everyday phrases like, just get on with it, or don't make a fuss. So when a man starts to struggle, he may feel that asking for help means that he's failing at something he should be able to handle on his own. Instead of seeking help, instead of seeing help seeking as a health seeking behavior, he sees it as admitting weakness. We can also see strong internal barriers. So often we see people minimize what they're feeling, telling themselves that it's not serious or that we should just push through it. And some people don't recognize the signs of distress early on because they haven't been encouraged to talk about emotions or understand symptoms of stress or burnout or depression. So others worry about losing control or being judged, especially by peers or managers that they want to impress. Then this creates a very real pressure to stay silent, even when things are getting worse. So as you can see on the screen there, common internal barriers for seeking help: fear of being judged or labelled, minimizing or normalizing distress, poor mental health literacy, concern about losing control, or that fix it myself mindset. Also find that men can have workplace specific barriers. So in many organizations, the culture unintentionally rewards toughness and constant availability when the message is high pressure is normal, or that everyone else is coping. Men may feel it's unsafe to admit that they're struggling. There can also be concerns about how they'll be perceived, whether it would affect promotional opportunities or their reputation at work. A lack of tailored support for men can reinforce this, because if the options don't feel relevant or anonymous, they're unlikely to be used. We also have practical constraints such as time, scheduling, workload, remote or hybrid setups that can help, that can prevent accessing help as well. All of these barriers that we've just been through contribute to delayed help seeking. And by the time a man reaches out, he may already be at breaking point. The silence becomes self-reinforcing. So if no one else is speaking up, then others might assume that they shouldn't either. Breaking this cycle starts with acknowledging that stigma isn't an individual failing, it's something shaped by culture, leadership, policies, and everyday language. The impact of these barriers are delayed help seeking, which leads to longer duration and greater severity of distress, reduced likelihood of early intervention, which means greater risk of crisis or breakdown. And it creates a cycle where men remain silent, reinforcing stigma or for others in the organization. So therefore, like, if no one else speaks up, then neither should I. So breaking the cycle, in order to break the cycle, we need to acknowledge that stigma is not just an individual problem, it's embedded in culture, language, and practices. Encourage leadership to model vulnerability and help seeking as a strength, not a weakness. Embed male-focused communication and tailored support options. Build safe spaces where conversations about mental health are normalized, not exceptional. Ensure practical accessibility of support, and shift those environments. Once we shift those environments, we can make it much easier for men to ask for support that they need early before things escalate. So we've looked at the overall landscape of men's mental health. But now I want to take us into a more focused conversation around how job roles, workplace culture, and gender norms collide to influence men's well-being. Men aren't just influenced by their personal lives. Work can amplify or suppress their stress levels, their coping strategies, and their willingness to ask for help. The intersection, as you can see on the diagram on the screen, of job role, organizational culture, and gender expectations is where we often see the greatest risk. So, for example, men in demanding roles may already be under pressure, and then on top of that, they have cultural expectations around masculinity. They may discourage them from expressing vulnerability or admitting that they're struggling. So in the next few slides, we're going to unpack the types of roles where men experience higher stress, cultural dividers that discourage help seeking, industry-specific pressures, and how modern working patterns like hybrid work can deepen isolation. When we look at the roles where men are statistically more represented, we see a clear pattern. Many of these jobs are high stakes, high intensity and high pressure. These include things like leadership roles, finance, law, consulting, engineering, tech, and heavily target-driven environments like sales. It also includes frontline roles like policing, security, and emergency response. Research from the Health and Safety Executive, or you might know it as HSE, shows that stress, depression, and anxiety are most strongly associated with workloads, tight deadlines, and a lack of autonomy. In roles like these, men often feel strong internal and external expectation to step up, to cope, and to power through challenges. So vulnerability is perceived as risky, not just emotionally, but professionally. This means that men in these roles may carry high stress levels of stress for long periods without any outlet or support. And that stress can slowly accumulate until it shows up in performance, behavior, or personal well-being. One of the biggest issues for men in the workplace is the combination of long hours, high expectations, and fear of judgment. Men often feel pressure to demonstrate commitment through long hours spent at the desk or being constantly available. This contributes to presenteeism, which is when you show up to work even though you're unwell, which is something that Deloitte has shown costs UK employers far more than actual absenteeism. On top of that, we see a lack of psychological safety in some workplaces. The sense that if I speak about how I'm feeling, it could be held against me. So for many men, this can activate the belief that the safest thing to do is to say nothing at all. And unfortunately, silence is where the problems deepen. Without early conversations, men often don't seek help until they reach a point of crisis or their performance is being questioned. So high expectations, long hours, and silence altogether equal an environment where men may be at greater risk of burnout and mental health decline. There are several industries where men not only make up the majority of the workforce, but also face substantial and unique pressures. So let's take construction, for example. According to the Office for National Statistics, construction workers have one of the highest suicide rates of any industry in the UK. Transport and logistics bring another layer of risk. So they have long hours, unpredictable shift patterns, and extended periods of isolation. In the military and emergency services, men face exposure to trauma, high responsibility, and a culture that traditionally rewards toughness and stoicism. So data from Mind's Blue Light program highlights that emergency responders experience higher rates of mental health challenges than the general population. So in all of these sectors, the culture often reinforces the idea that emotional expression is risky or unprofessional. This then reinforces the silence and sometimes does have tragic consequences. Many workplaces, especially those with the majority male teams, the culture unintentionally reinforces emotional avoidance. This is where we hear phrases like, don't show weakness, just get on with it, and real men cope, or even just workplace banter that shuts down honest expression. And when these messages, spoken or unspoken, are present in a team, men receive a clear signal. Their struggles aren't welcome here. So even when support is technically available, the culture barriers prevent men from accessing it. They don't want to be judged, they don't want to be treated differently, and they don't want to appear anything other than capable. This is why culture change is so critical, not just policy change. People rarely follow policy, they follow the behavioral norms of people around them. Moment on the impact of hybrid and remote working, it does have lots of benefits, but they do also create new barriers, especially for men who may already struggle to initiate emotional conversations. When employees are working remotely, managers lose the informal interactions that help them spot early signs of distress. You're not seeing things like body language, tone of voice, or the subtle behavior changes that might be more visible when people are in person. So men who withdraw emotionally can do that so much more easily from home. If they're struggling, they may retreat behind productivity, silence, or short messages. And because men often tie their identity to performance, communication may become purely task-focused. That masks deeper issues until they start to escalate. This means leaders need to be far more intentional when checking in with someone who's working from home. So normalize well-being conversations and making connection a priority, not an afterthought. So I just want to bring this to life with a brief example. Let's imagine a man called Mark. Mark is high-performing, reliable, and has always been known as the person who just gets on with things. Then, after a few months, things start to shift. He starts missing deadlines, he starts to withdraw, he's irritable, and reduced participation in meetings. His manager just assumes he is disengaged or losing motivation. It's not until a formal performance conversation is arranged that Mark finally breaks down and admits he has been struggling for months. He didn't want to burden anyone, he didn't want to be seen differently, and he believed he should handle it by himself. This example is something that we see incredibly often. Men often only open up when performance has deteriorated to a point where silence is no longer an option. If help seeking had been normalized earlier on in Mark's journey, and if the culture had signaled that vulnerability is accepted, Mark might have spoken up before he reached crisis point. So before we move on, I'd just like to give you a moment to reflect. Think of a time when a man in your team or someone you've managed seemed stressed, withdrawn, or overwhelmed. Ask yourself, how easy would it have been for him to seek help? What were the cultural signs in your team at the time? Would he have felt safe to be vulnerable? Would he have feared judgment or professional impact? This reflection just helps us understand where the barriers are in our own organizations and what needs to change for men to feel truly supported. Thank you. In the next section, we're going to focus on your role as leaders, managers, HR professionals, mental health champions in shaping a workplace culture where men feel genuinely safe to seek support. Culture isn't just what's written in our policies. It's about what people see, hear, and experience every day. It's the tone that leaders set. It's the conversations that are normalized, and it's also the behaviors that go unchallenged. For men, this is particularly important. Men often take their cue from leadership about what is acceptable and what is not. If they see leaders who are open and respectful of mental health, then they are far more likely to reach out. If they see silence or stigma, they'll tend to keep things to themselves. So this section is all about understanding the influence that you have, how your behavior shapes the emotional climate of your team, and what you can do to make that climate genuinely supportive. Okay, number one of the strongest predictors of whether men feel comfortable seeking help at work is whether they see leaders modeling vulnerability. Now, vulnerability doesn't mean oversharing or being unprofessional. It can just be as simple as saying something like, I've had periods of stress where it's been really difficult for me, and reaching out has made such a big difference. When leaders acknowledge their own humanity, it sends a powerful message. Struggling isn't a failure, it's part of being human. This is especially impactful for men, who often believe they need to be the strong one, the reliable one, the steady one. When they see senior figures being honest, it breaks down unspoken rules about toughness. By showing vulnerability, you create permission for others to talk openly before they reach breaking point. Number two is around language, because the words we use shape how people feel when speaking up. So, for example, when we talk about someone who is failing or not coping, those terms carry judgment. For men who often attach identity to being competent, these words can feel quite threatening. So when we use language like struggling, or I'm struggling, finding things difficult, or going through a tough period, we're normalizing the experience. We're signaling that challenges are expected, not an evidence of weakness. Language also affects timing. If conversations only happen when someone is already at crisis point, people learn that help is only allowed when things are very bad. So choosing supportive language helps men engage earlier and more openly. Number three, workplaces operate on two layers: formal rules and informal rules. Formal rules are what's written down in policies, and informal norms are how we do things here. And very often those unwritten norms are more influential. So, for example, if the culture includes banter that makes vulnerability embarrassing, or if people are praised for just getting on with it, then men absorb the message that talking about mental health just isn't acceptable. Many teams unintentionally reinforce the idea that resilience equals silence. This makes it so much harder for men to speak up. Recognizing, naming, and gently interrupting unhelpful norms is a key part of your role. If the informal culture doesn't support well-being, then formal policies won't be enough. Another essential part of building a supportive culture is consistency. When managers respond consistently with empathy and fairness, trust grows. When the response varies, or when supportive language is used publicly, but then judgment appears privately, trust breaks down. For example, if someone opens up about struggling and their workload is then increased, or they're treated differently afterwards, others will quickly learn that being honest is risky. Consistency means following through. It means giving the same level of support regardless of gender. It means encouraging early conversations, not waiting for performance reviews or crisis. Trust is built slowly over time, action by action, And for men, consistency can be the difference between reaching out early or waiting until the situation becomes critical. Even with the best intentions, some workplace policies can unintentionally discourage men from seeking help. For example, punitive absence management systems can make men reluctant to report stress or mental health issues early because they fear it will negatively affect their record. Rigid checking patterns can also send a message that flexibility is only for certain groups. Many men avoid requesting flexibility because they don't want to appear less committed. It's also common for policies to require long processes or high thresholds for receiving support, which can discourage early intervention. So part of creating a supportive culture is reviewing your policies through a well-being lens and asking, does this help people speak up or does it unintentionally silence them? Let's move into some practical actions that leaders and HR teams can take to create a more supportive culture. So the first is sharing lived experience. Again, this doesn't mean revealing anything that you're not comfortable with. It simply means describing a time when you felt under pressure and sought help. That kind of openness models the behaviour you want others to adopt. Secondly, role modelling, help seeking for yourself, for example, taking annual leave properly, using well-being resources, or being transparent about work boundaries, shows your employees that you're looking after your mental health, and that's normal and encouraged. Building simple well-being check-ins into regular conversations makes support feel more routine and less like a big event. And there are also structural ways to support men's well-being. So, for example, normalizing flexible working for men has a huge impact. When flexibility is seen as gender neutral, men feel more able to adjust their working patterns during periods of stress or caregiving. Another important action is ensuring real representation in well-being committees or working groups. When men's voices are included, the initiatives created are more relevant, more engaging, and more inclusive. You can also invite male mental health champions to support campaigns or awareness events. Peer support is particularly effective for men because it reduces the fear of judgment and creates trusted points of contact. So these practical examples help turn intentions into real visible change. I do have a few more practical strategies for you, though. These are things that your organisation can put into place to support men's mental health proactively and to help men access support much earlier than they typically do. So this slide brings together 5 key approaches that have been shown to make a meaningful difference. So the first one you can see there, male-focused wellbeing initiatives. So that is things specifically designed with men in mind. That could be things like a men's mental health discussion group that people can opt into, targeted awareness campaigns. So as you know, it's Men's Health Month. You've also got Men's Health Week earlier in the year. And these campaigns can help normalise conversations and make it clear that men's mental health is part of the organisation's wellbeing agenda, not an afterthought. Anonymous access to support. So a second strategy is to make sure support is accessible anonymously. So that can remove the fear of judgment or consequences. So for example, if you have resources around, like posters or flyers, having a QR code or a link available so that men can discreetly use those resources without having to take a leaflet or talk to HR. That can be helpful. Confidential EAP services, making sure that people know that they're anonymous, and anonymous digital check-ins as well. So we talk a lot around making well-being part of our weekly conversations, but it might be better to have that one-to-one or via a message instead of like in a team meeting. Mental health champions and peer support is another really powerful tool. It's important to identify credible, trusted voices in your organization, people who men naturally relate to, including male champions where possible. We're going to go on to peer support in a little bit more detail at the end of the session, but these champions can be trained to notice early signs of difficulty, start safe, supportive conversations, signpost formal support, peer support works because it feels personal and it feels informal, and men often find it easier to talk to a colleague that they trust than to a HR professional or manager. The key is choosing champions who are approachable, empathetic, and respected. Moving on to line manager training. Line managers are often the first people to notice a change, but many don't feel confident in starting wellbeing conversations. So good training covers how to spot those signs, how to start conversations without judgment, and what adjustments can be made quickly and informally. Also, how to follow up. And if a manager feels confident and supported, they'll intervene earlier, and that early intervention can prevent problems from escalating. Finally, the foundation of everything is psychological safety. This is about creating a workplace where people feel they won't be embarrassed, punished, or judged for expressing something personal. In this final section, we're going to talk about psychological safety a little bit more. We're going to explore what it really takes to create psychological safety for all genders, a space where people feel safe to be honest, ask for help, and show vulnerability. Psychological safety is foundational to well-being. When it's present, people feel valued and supported, and when it's missing, silence, fear, and stress take over. And importantly, what we're talking about here isn't something abstract, it's something shaped by everyday behaviours, leadership actions, and team dynamics. When we're thinking about psychological safety, our goal is to build a culture where speaking up is seen as courageous, not risky, where vulnerability is a strength rather than a liability, and where every gender feels equally supported. So what exactly is psychological safety? Psychological safety means people feel free to express concerns, thoughts, and emotions without fear of embarrassment, punishment, or subtle judgment. It means that someone can say, I'm struggling, or I need help, or I made a mistake, and feel confident that the response will be supportive rather than critical. This is especially important for men who often learn from a young age that showing emotion is risky. Creating psychological safety helps counter harmful gender norms by giving men explicit permission to be honest. It's equally important for women and non-binary colleagues who may face different pressures around judgment, credibility, or acceptance. Psychological safety is universal, but its impact can be life-changing for those who feel they can't speak up. Psychological safety benefits everyone, but it looks slightly different depending on lived experience. So for many men, safety means a reassurance that they won't be seen as weak if they open up. For many women, it means knowing they won't be judged as emotional or overlooked professionally. For non-binary or gender diverse colleagues, it often means feeling accepted and protected from exclusion. So when we create a workplace where all genders feel safe to be themselves, we create stronger teams, deeper trust, and better performance. Psychological safety is not just a well-being strategy, it's a high-performance strategy. Teams with strong physical safety communicate better, innovate more, and support one another more effectively. I am aware that we are coming to the end of our session, so I'm just going to let you know about more of our services and training available. Now, we've spoken a little bit today about peer support and how a peer support program is a really good way of supporting mental health for everyone. This looks different for each organization based on their specific needs, but essentially a peer supporter is someone who advocates for mental health. They take action to raise awareness of mental health and challenge stigma. Peer supporters can also help their colleagues who are struggling with their mental health by advising them on appropriate support services, both within and outside of their organization. Now, peer supporters aren't expected to be mental health experts or to diagnose mental health problems. Their role is to promote positive mental health and to signpost to relevant support and help where appropriate. The more that we promote positive mental health, the more we challenge stigma, and the more men and women alike have the ability to seek help early. Now, anyone can be a peer supporter. They don't need personal experience of mental health problems. Those who do have lived experience of mental health problems may find it easier to start conversations and to challenge stigma. But any action that a peer supporter takes, no matter how big or small, helps to end stigma and raise awareness. And we provide peer supporter training or mental health champions training, whatever you want to call it. And that can be delivered online or in person, and we can adapt it to suit your business needs. So if that's something that you're interested, please do get in touch with us. I'll give you our email address at the end of the session. We do also deliver mental health awareness training for both staff members and for managers. And again, that can be tailored to your organization. We offer spot the signs suicide awareness training, and we also have post-suicide support training if that's something that's relevant to you. And we can offer counselling sessions or drop-in sessions. And again, that's something that can be tailored to your organization's needs. And just to finish, I just want to give you a few things that you could try today. So whether it's encouraging open conversations, recognizing stress early, or simply connecting more as a team, everyone has a role to play. This is about shared responsibility and simple, repeatable actions. So remember, even small changes can spark big results.